Hi guys, welcome to the Intentional Homeschooling podcast, which is mostly about books. I'm your host, Chantel, a former teacher turned homeschooler and an avid reader from childhood to now, hence why a homeschooling podcast is mostly about books. Today we're going to jump in with official episode number 1, and we're going to share a reading wrap-up, and by we I mean me and apparently all my personalities. So I'm hoping to do these monthly, although they may occasionally be seasonal reading wrap-ups, and I want to share the good books that we have been reading in our homeschool, the good books we've been reading together, the ones that we're reading on our own or that my kids are reading on their own, or sometimes some of the middle grade books that I'm sharing, reading on my own that I've enjoyed. I do have a whole channel on BookTube devoted to the books that I read, so I'm not gonna rehash all that here, although sometimes there may be some carryover as I share about middle grade books that I love. So first of all, I want to start off by saying thank you for your enthusiasm for that podcast. I loved all the comments I got on the YouTube channel, where this will also be hosted. If you are listening via podcast, that's great. You can also watch on YouTube. It doesn't really matter to me where you want to be. It will be available for you in both places so that whatever works best for you is there for you. I appreciate all the comments I got. Instagram, everyone seems very excited. I'm not the only one that loves books and using books in our homeschool, so thank you for that. I am still, as of right now, trying to get the podcast onto a couple different platforms. Of course, somehow technical problems. It works great in a bunch of places and then just doesn't in others. But hopefully before the next podcast the kinks will be worked out there. I'm hoping so. So the one thing I want to try to do in nearly every episode is bring a book out from the vault. A book that I feel like I haven't talked about enough recently. Anything from picture books to books that I enjoy, homeschool, nonfiction, or anything. Just any kind of book that I feel like needs time in the spotlight. And it was really hard to think of where to start for this, like which book is book number 1. And then I thought about it and then realized, no, I actually personally do have a few favorite picture books, and I think this one it's definitely top 5. I don't know if I could pick between the top 5, but this was a fairly obvious choice for me. And that is The Paper Dolls by Julia Donaldson and illustrated by Rebecca Kopp. So Julia Donaldson is more well known for The Gruffalo, which is also a great book. I love that one. But The Paper Dolls is something special. It's like a whole another level compared to The Gruffalo. It has a similar rhyme scheme as The Gruffalo, so you've got that fun part added in, but it's a little bit more serious. It's about a girl who makes a chain of paper dolls with her mom, and she plays with it. She goes different places and they meet kind of bad guys. They go on adventures and something happens one day and the paper dolls are wrecked. And I just loved the idea of childhood memories, and I think the illustrations are really cute too. Plus the paper dolls, their names are really adorable. They were Ticky and Tacky and Jackie the Backy and Jim with 2 noses and Joe with a bow. Yes, this is one that if my kids are in the mood for me to read a picture book to them, even still at their ages of 9 and 12, I'm gonna pull out The Paper Dolls. I will never get sick of this book. So if you've never read it, I highly recommend either buying it or getting it out from your library. I will be linking all the books I'm talking about in the show notes, which will be on the blog over at Intentional Homeschooling. So you don't have to jot down a bunch of titles. You can just head there and I will have you covered. One of the fun things I wanted to add into whenever I do these reading wrap-ups monthly or seasonally is give you a total of the amount of money that we have taken out from, the value of books that we have taken out from our library so far this year. And it's fun to be kicking this off near the beginning of the year. Our number is pretty small. So the last time I went to the library at the end of our visit, so far this year we have taken out $1,168.04 worth in books. We don't take out movies from the library because they're always scratched, and we also don't even have any kind of DVD player. So this is just books. And this does not count audiobooks that we use via the apps. These are physical books that we've taken out from the library. So we're starting out the year just over $1,000. It's a good start. I'm curious to see where we're going to be at next time and by the end of the year. In case you're wondering, my library does this automatically. It gets put onto the receipt, onto the bottom of the receipt. I do know some places you can ask for your tally and some places just don't have it. So it's too bad if you live in one of those places that don't have it, but it's a really cool feature. And I know some people do it manually. They write down all their titles and the value of those books and they manually do it for themselves, which is more intense than I feel like being. Now it's time to officially go on to the reading wrap-up. Here are some good books that we read this month. I'm going to be starting with picture books. So if you're on the YouTube channel, you'll be able to see the covers. If you're on the podcast, you can head to the show notes. It'll all be there. The first one I want to share is Arthur Who Wrote Sherlock. This is written by Linda Bailey and illustrated by Isabel Fulla. I don't know how to say her name. My son pointed out, he didn't recognize the name, but he pointed out that the illustrations looked a lot like the illustrations from the Aggie Morton Mystery Queen series. And I checked our Aggie Morton books and he was totally right. She is the illustrator of both the Aggie Morton Mystery Queen series, which, bonus recommendation, is a fun middle grade mystery series. And she did this book, which I think she might have also done. This is the second book kind of in the series that Linda Bailey has written. The first one was Mary Who Wrote Frankenstein, I think is what it was called. This is Arthur Who Wrote Sherlock. I'm loving this series so far. So it is like non-fiction, but it feels more picture book-esque because we're learning about the people who wrote these stories. So in this one, we're learning about Arthur Conan Doyle and his journey to becoming this famous author. Sometimes you think that it's just easy for authors, and then you read a story like this and you realize how much they went through and how hard it was. I thoroughly enjoyed both of the books kind of in this series so far, and I hope she just continues this and keeps going and does it with a bunch more authors. I guess since I accidentally started with nonfiction picture books, I've got two more to share. These ones are both by the same author, Elise Gravel. She is a Canadian author, which I like to highlight when I can, which actually reminds me, I'm like 90% sure that, yeah, Linda Bailey is too. That was not on purpose. I didn't try to get a bunch of Canadian authors here. But The Mosquito is a fun story. This is a series called Disgusting Critters that Elise Gravel has, and she has the fly, the worm, the rat, the slug, head lice, the spider, the toad, the cockroach, and the bat. And you better believe after I finished reading this book, I went and requested all of them from the library. It's like Ron Swanson, give me all the bacon and eggs you have. Give me all the Elise Gravel Disgusting Critter books that you have. So these are great informational non-fiction picture books that tell us about mosquitoes. Generally, the text is great information about the bug, and then on the one hand, we have the illustrations that are a slightly more humorous take on the critters. So I actually was very intrigued because I am one of those people that doesn't get bitten by mosquitoes very often. I have people in my family that are like magnets and I am not. But I learned from this one that she can find us by detecting the carbon dioxide that we emit when we breathe. She can also smell us and feel the heat from our bodies. And then on the one side here, the mosquito is saying, someone has bad breath around here. Yummy. So I highly recommend this book at least, and I'm going to read the rest of the series and we'll see if I recommend it as highly, but I definitely enjoyed this. And then another Elise Gravel book. So just a bunch of Canadian authors here apparently. This one, I don't know why I requested it. I think it was because it was Elise Gravel and I thought maybe this would appeal to my son because of the title, and I didn't read the subtitle. So and I'm sure lots of other people are going to be like this as well, I completely misunderstood what this book was about. It's called Killer Underwear Invasion. And the subtitle is How to Spot Fake News, Disinformation, and Conspiracy Theories. So this is a nonfiction book that grippingly tells kids. My daughter loved it, and so did I. all about disinformation and how to figure out what sources to trust. And it's got the like more boring information, but it breaks it up so well with showing examples of disinformation in an obviously false way. So here, there's a photo, and then it shows you an edited photo where it's incorporated scorpions onto this picture. And then here, this person's reading the news. It's a scorpion invasion. And so it's talking about how things can be doctored, and, you know, people create clickbait headlines, and why people believe fake news. And this one is all about, there's a whole section kind of about politicians, not about politicians. Politicians are their example, but why other people want to spread rumors about other people. And this politician, he shares the incorrect information that his opponent pinches puppies. And so there's this whole thing throughout the book about, oh, so-and-so pinches puppies. So it's approached in a easy to understand way for kids. It really captures their attention, and it gives so much great information. I hope she does other books kind of in this vein. I've definitely, like I said, just barely with the other book, requested a lot of her books from the library now. Then I have like one actual just regular old fiction picture book, and it's called A Warm Winter. This is by Faridun Oral, and this is a cute little story. We are definitely still in the middle of winter here. It's currently melting as I'm filming this, recording this, but I'm sure it's going to come again. So this story is all about a mouse who goes to gather a bunch of sticks to keep warm through the winter, and he ends up gathering too many sticks to carry. And so he ends up finding some friends throughout the forest to help him carry his load. And it's a sweet little winter story about friendship and helping others and cooperation, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm going to be asking my kids each month a couple of their favorites from the month that I can share. Sometimes they will hop on here with me, just depends. I don't want to force them to. Sometimes they like to talk about the books that they enjoyed. But this was my son's recommendation from this last month. Him and I went to a book sale together, and he found the indispensable Calvin and Hobbes. So he also has the essential Calvin and Hobbes. He got the book a few years ago from my brother, and he wasn't quite ready for it then, but in the last few months he's been loving it. And so it was really cool that he could find another treasury of the Calvin and Hobbes comics. And I know these have been around forever. I honestly, this isn't really my kind of humor or comics. Maybe it's more of a boy thing, I'm not sure. But he has spent a long time poring over the two treasuries that he has, and he has just loved these. And I think if you can get a boy interested in reading, I don't care if they're reading graphic novels, I don't care if they're reading comics, it's all gonna build that reading fluency and make them realize that they enjoy reading, which I think is sometimes the hardest and the biggest step, is just getting them to realize like, oh, I don't have to hate reading. So I love that he really enjoyed this. And then the book that my daughter loved the most this month was Caleb and Kit. So this is by Beth Verabel. I haven't read this book, but we found it when we were looking up books with kids that have different disabilities. We were checking out like physical disabilities and all sorts. And this happened to be on a list, so she got the ebook from the library, and when she was done, she said she needed to buy a physical copy for herself because it was that good. So this is about 12-year-old Caleb who has cystic fibrosis, and then he meets a girl named Kit. I haven't read this. In March, over on the BookTube community on YouTube, there is always this readathon called Middle Grade March, where they just try to encourage people to read more middle grade books. The last I saw, it hadn't been like announced all the details yet, but I plan on joining in like I have the last few years. And I always like to get good middle grade book recommendations from my kids and just create a stack of middle grade books that I may read throughout March. And I think this one is going to be going on there. I'm pretty sure my daughter's gonna be forcing this one on me. And I love that. I love it. I do like to proofread books for my kids, but I also love when they read a book and they're so excited about it, they just want other people to read it. So I can't say a whole lot about this, but she was completely hooked. So I feel like it's a good one. And she's got really good taste. I do plan on doing a podcast episode coming up in a week or two maybe, sharing some of the middle grade books I plan on reading from middle grade March. I'm slowly collecting a stack, and then after they make the announcement of what the prompts are, sometimes they have prompts, I may follow them, I may not. I will share my pile of possibilities, I'll be calling it, because it's just going to be a stack of middle grade books that I would like to read in March, but I'm just gonna pull from there as I want. Okay, and then I've got one last book to share, and that is George Orwell's Animal Farm, the graphic novel. I got my daughter to read this. This was one of the ones I had on her list of books to read in 7th grade. She read this, and then she is now reading the original Animal Farm, and I think that adaptations, whether in graphic novel form or like shorter abridged versions, are something that I did not value until the last few years, and now I just want to get all the abridged and adaptations I possibly can, because I want my kids to fall in love with some of these books that might be above their comprehension level, but if they can read a shorter version of some sort and fall in love with a story, then they're going to be that much more ready for the full story. And any of the language maybe that goes over their heads, at least they are not confused on the whole plot line. I feel like this Animal Farm graphic novel was very well done. I read Animal Farm in high school, did not enjoy it, and I honestly do think that my daughter will enjoy it. I think she is enjoying it, but I did enjoy the graphic novel, and I think I would have enjoyed the actual book better had I been able to read the graphic novel sooner. I think this just came out in 2020, if I'm correct. I am not correct. 2019, 2018. I guess I'm just slow to the game, but I want to read more really good graphic novel or abridged adaptations to kind of push my kids in that direction before we reach the full-on novels. Of a lot of them. Some of them I feel like you don't need an abridged version, but some of them you do. So there you have it. There is the reading wrap-up for the month of January. I already know that February is going to have some good books on it because we're already a few days in and there's already a few books piling up. And this is also the end of the first episode. I want to thank each of you for being here, for sharing the podcast and the YouTube channel with friends that you think will also benefit from more good books in their home and in their homeschool. And I'm excited to kind of start this new journey with you guys.